We'll begin with our pinch pot upside down on our placemat so we can paint the outside color first. Begin by choosing the color you want to paint on the outside and giving it a little stir. As we apply it to our pinch pot, we're going to blot it and kind of dab it on instead of brushing it on because it will go on a little bit thicker and give it a nice even coat. You do not have to pick yours up. I just picked mine up to show you kind of how it looks as I'm blotting it on. So I dunk and I blot maybe 5 or 6 times and then I dunk it again. You'll also notice that I'm avoiding putting glaze on the bottom of my pinch pot where it will touch the table. This is to avoid it sticking to the kiln shelf. So I'm working my way around the pinch pot, kind of one row at a time. And the reason I'm doing that is because it's really important to pay attention to putting one even coat on. And sometimes if you kind of work in a random way, you'll forget where you painted and where you haven't painted yet because the glaze dries really fast. And once I've made my way all the way around once, I'm going to stop painting, set my brush down on the lid of the color, and then I can either just be patient or just gently blow on it. The glaze dries really quick, so you'll see it go from shiny to not shiny, and that's when you know you're ready for your second coat. Now that my first layer is dry, I'm going to start to apply my second coat by blotting it, kind of working my way around in that same path, up and down, one dunk and about 5 or 6 blots per dunk. Putting it on thick, but not so thick that it's dripping. So if it does start to drip, you want to kind of just push those drips around a little bit until they spread out enough where they're not dripping. Glaze is really expensive, so I know a little bit will get on our placemats, but we want to make sure not to waste it. Once our pinch pot is dry enough to handle, we're going to place our middle finger and our pointer finger on the bottom and our thumb at the edge and just carefully flip it over so we can paint the inside color. And we want to wash our brush really well in between colors. So you can see me running the water and kind of squeezing and cleaning out all of the glaze inside that brush before I move on. And then I also want to dry it off with a paper towel so that it's not too wet and it doesn't water down the next color of glaze. So we'll choose that inside color. I'm using clear, give it a little stir, and start from the bottom and kind of work your way up from the bottom. First I do the bottom as one coat, blotting that glaze on, and then I come up the sides and around so that I'm making sure to put one even coat of that next color. Besides catching our drips, these placemats are really helpful because we can turn our piece as we're glazing without having to touch the wet glaze. And then we'll set our brush down on the lid and gently blow on that glaze to help it speed up its drying. And once it's dry, we can start our second coat. And as I paint my second coat of clear, I'm going to try to work in the same path as I did for the first coat. So I'm doing the bottom first, and then I'm working my way up and around the whole inside. I'm turning mine kind of on an angle so that you can peek inside as I glaze. It's really important to paint glaze all the way to the top of that inside edge. Now I'm letting my second coat of clear dry a little bit, and then I'm ready to begin my detail color. So for that, I'm using the lime green. I'm using a smaller brush for details so that I can control them as I work. So we're going to stir it up just like we did with our other colors. And then I am going to blot that color around the top edge of my piece. Remember, we need 2 layers of every color that we add. So I'm going to let that top edge dry and then come back and do a second layer. While I'm waiting for that top edge to dry, I'm actually going to start my drip details. Drips are the only thing that you're going to add to your piece where you only have to do 1 layer because they are naturally kind of thick the way that they go on. So you'll load your brush kind of heavy with a lot of glaze, and then you'll go to the edge of your piece. So whether you're dripping inside or outside, you're going to do that same thing, and you're just going to kind of wipe your brush as if you were cleaning off the extra paint along the lip of the brush, and it will naturally flow down because of gravity. If you make a drip and it's not as long as you like it to be, just add a little bit more glaze before it starts to dry, and it will naturally drip down a little further. So if you wanted to create a pattern, you could do like a long drip and short drip this way. One thing we need to be careful of is to not do so many drips that it puddles and pools up in the bottom, because that can get really sharp and dangerous in the kiln. So we want to avoid a puddle at the bottom of our pinch pot. So I let those drips dry a little bit, and then I decided to check and make sure that I had glaze everywhere that I thought I did. And I'm glad I checked because I found a few spots along the rim where I didn't have any glaze at all. You can see those 2 little white spots there. So I am glad I checked. If we leave any spots on our pinch pot without glaze, they will not be food safe after they're fired. So now I am going around and painting that second coat around that top edge so it has 2 layers. And I decided that I wanted to add a couple little dots as decoration along the bottom. So I'm being really careful to not touch the wet glaze at the top, and also to not put so much glaze on each dot that it starts to drip and move on me. So I have to find like that right amount. So you'll see me kind of going back to those dots and removing a little bit of glaze so that they don't drip into a spot that I don't want them to drip. And this is good to know if you're planning on doing any dots or stripes or designs. This is how you will do them. You'll have to build them up in 2 layers. So this will be my first layer of dots, and then I'll have to go back and after they're dry and do a second layer. And when you're all done, make sure that all your brushes are really well cleaned for the next group of kids that'll be using these. So really wash them well, squeeze out those bristles, make sure all the glaze is out. You can even use a little soap in the palm of your hand under the running water. And then those get stored with the bristles facing up in the cup where you got them from.